Oregon just had a big recruiting weekend, and these are the three guys that I think they need to prioritize. Here we go.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time. Once again for Locked On Ducks, I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks, which is why, if you have not already, please like, comment, subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to or watch the show, which today is brought to you by our friends over at LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. We'll talk recruiting, we'll talk Oregon defense, and Dana Altman has brought in a guy who's replacing N'Faly Dante? Kinda, sorta, maybe. We'll talk about Supreme Cook on today's show as well. But big weekend of recruiting. This is what June is all about. Big recruiting weekends, getting guys on campus, and Oregon had a bevy of blue chip prospects, and the names that stood out the most to me are Lincoln Cure, Naeem Offord, and Jordan Davison. So here's why. Let's start with Lincoln Cure. So I am a big Lincoln Cure fan. He's a 5-star tight end from the state of Kansas. Yes, you heard that correctly. This wouldn't be the first time Oregon has recruited one of those kind of random Midwest states. Devin Jackson was a pretty highly touted linebacker recruit in the class of 2022. He didn't come out of Kansas. He came out of Nebraska, but how different are they really? Well, one's Big 12 and one is Big 10. Obviously, we're in the Big 10, in case you forgot, we being Oregon, of course. But I think that for Lincoln Cure, he's a really high-profile target. Got plenty of big-time schools after him, as you would expect. But the reason I have him so high on my priority list of the guys that were on campus visiting this past weekend is Oregon does not have a tight end commit yet in the class of 2025, but they also are looking exceedingly thin at that position for the class or for the 2025 season. Now, you've got A.J. Pugliano in the class of 2024 and Roger Saliapaga, who's listed as a wide receiver, probably going to end up playing tight end as kind of that, hybrid type sort of player offensively. But along with Kenyon Sadiq, those are the only actual tight ends. And do you know for sure that Saliapaga or Pugliano are going to be able to play in 2025 and have meaningful roles? Not necessarily. You would think they'll have an easy time doing so because they're going to have a year to essentially, or perhaps literally, redshirt this season, but have time to adjust to the college lifestyle, adjust to the college game, be in the weight room for a year, get their bodies into the sort of shape that they need to be ready next season. But still, 3 scholarship tight ends, that's a pretty thin lineup. And Oregon's, got a solid 3 deep at tight end this year with T. Ferg and Patrick Herbert, and then Kenyon Sadiq in some sort of order there. I think depending on personnel packages, Sadiq could even be ahead of Patrick Herbert because his physical upside is just so immensely high. Do you expect the true freshman to be ready? We've seen true freshman tight ends play before. Maliki Matavau did it. Terrence Ferguson did it. Sadiq did it a year ago. It's not completely unheard of, but I think the tight end position is one where Oregon is looking to load up and needs to be able to load up because you also don't know if Saliapaga and Pugliano both are going to stick around. You'd think they would because they haven't had a chance to really play out their Oregon careers, but neither did Ashton Kozart. He was a 4-star receiver commit, and he's going to play for SMU this year. He was basically redshirting last year on the receiving corps and just decided, nope, this isn't the place that I wanted to be, or this isn't the timeline that I was hoping for, and so he decided to transfer out. So I think Lincoln Cure should be pretty high on that priority list. Second one, Naeem Offord. Dude is just a game changer. He is a game changer, and you always look for those sort of guys in the secondary. He's an Ohio State commit at the moment. Getting him back on campus, though, that's pretty massive. That's pretty massive. I heard the Odds and Audible guys talking about how there was a different Ohio State commit, I think a tight end, that they didn't want to take other visits because he was already committed. And I don't know all the inner workings of how that works between a school and a guy who's verbally committed, whether they can, legally go to him and say, no, you can't take other official visits, or whether they're just kind of saying, we'd prefer if you don't. otherwise decommit and open up the spot. I don't know. Like those conversations are not ones that I have been privy to before, but Naeem Offord's a high profile target. And if Oregon's able to flip him, I think that'd be impactful in two ways. Number one, really talented player who would come in at a relative position of need in the secondary that's losing a lot of guys after this upcoming 2024 season. But number two, you send messages with some recruits more than others. If you flip Naeem Offord, it's not going to be easy. Not going to be easy. It's not as if Ohio State is some slouch program that Oregon's competing with. No, definitely not. But if you're able to flip him, like they did Jeremiah McLaughlin in the 2024 cycle, kind of puts the rest of the Big Ten and Ohio State specifically on notice. And I don't think that's Oregon's rival on the field just yet. That takes time, and you have to play more matchups than the Ducks and Buckeyes have so far, particularly as conference foes. But on the recruiting trail, kind of seems like Oregon and Ohio State are the two best recruiters in the Big Ten. I mean, Michigan's really good, but they're not going to crack the top five. They're a little bit stingy, not entirely. Like they're kind of like Notre Dame, except Notre Dame currently has got a top five recruiting class in 2024. Oregon right now is sitting kind of in the high teens or at number 20 last time I had checked on 24/7 Sports after their two offensive line commitments last week, one of whom I'm going to have on the show later this week. That's going to be tomorrow, actually. I'm not going to tell you who. I'm going to leave that a surprise, but it's going to be a great time either way. So I think their class is going to continue to grow in size and grow in ranking as well, but that's why Offord would be so big is, yeah, it would go up, but it would also just kind of be another jab at Ohio State. Like, hey, we're here now. We are Oregon, and this is what Oregon can do. That's the message that Lanning and company would be sending. And then the third one that I'd place as the highest priority, again, just to the group that was on campus this weekend, is Jordan Davison. And he's running back. When I watch this film, I see Thomas Tyner. A little bit bulkier, ridiculously good feet and lateral movement. Not necessarily a home run hitter the way that De'Aaron Hill Jr. is, who's the other Oregon running back that they have committed. He's a guy that has just got ridiculous speed. But running back is a position where Oregon, again, is going to lose at least one. I would think at least one of Jordan James or Noah Whittington are gone after this season. Both could return. Both could go elsewhere. Whittington, I'm not sure. He might have to get a medical, a red shirt there. I've not double checked that. But again, that's a position group that you could see Oregon wanting to have bodies at going forward. And I could see a guy like Jaden Lamar or DeJuan Riggs transferring out if they don't see a path to playing time emerge. But maybe one does emerge. Not as if they aren't talented players, but Davison's a guy, modern day high school. Oregon fans that follow recruiting should know that school pretty darn well by now because Oregon recruits it exceptionally well. So Lincoln Cure, tight end, Naeem Offord, defensive back, and Jordan Davison, running back. Those are the highest priority recruits from this past weekend of visitors, but there are going to be more weekends, and there are going to be more visitors, and there are going to be more commits as the summer rolls along. Drop your thoughts in the YouTube comments or hit me up on X, formerly known as Twitter. Mailbag questions are a great time, and one of you asked one about Oregon's defense and the numbers they could put up this year. What are their sack numbers going to do? That's coming up next. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board, folks. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals that you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't even visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. There's a reason 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. You should too. LinkedIn.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. First, second segment sip of the week. Won't be the last. Absolutely not. Mailbag time. YouTube comments or X, formerly known as Twitter, at @McLaughlinCFB or at LockedOnDucks. Those be the handles. DMs and mentions are wide open. But if you want priority access and all sorts of other perks, go join the flock over at Subtext, link in the description below wherever you listen to or watch this show. Free 14-day trial, then it's just $5 a month. Not a requirement though, but can be useful depending on what your objectives are. This question came in from Blazer Duck, who has not submitted a question in a hot minute. Good to have you back. Spencer, Oregon's moving from a pass-happy Pac-12 conference, rip indeed, RIP, sweet prince, to a run-heavy, offensively challenged... Sorry, I don't know why that got me. Maybe it's because I'm recording late at night and I'm just giggly at the moment. Offensively challenged in comparison to the Pac-12 and the Big Ten, or Big 18. Gross, in all caps. This is already my favorite question of the week. Whoever submits a question that gets this many laughs out of me, you get a shout out on the show. I feel like Oregon's overall team sack number may go down this year, even though I feel like their defense will be better than last year. If Big Ten teams are handing the ball off more than the quarterbacks the quarterbacks aren't holding the ball for as long, allowing the Ducks to get home for the sack, am I crazy to think this? Should my expectations for TFLs go up? Thanks for your thought. You're my number one go-to for all Oregon Duck insight. Well, I appreciate that very, very much, and I appreciate you sending the question in. So, Oregon had a sack problem in 2022. It was a historically bad year rushing the passer and was an area that Oregon desperately needed to upgrade in 2023, and they did. They had 18 sacks, which is not a big number, in 2022. And last year, they had 34. So almost doubled their production in sacks from 2022 to 2023, which is a really great sign if you're looking for those statistical indicators as to whether or not the coaching staff knows what they are doing and is making improvements and developing players and building a program rather than just bringing in really talented guys. That's a number that I think is really, really telling. You have a weakness, you address it, and you improve upon it in a big, big way. I think your point about the pass-happy offenses is a really good one, because last year, Oregon was playing in a conference that had the best lineup of quarterbacks in the entire country. This year, amongst the Power Four conferences, they're playing in probably the worst. I mean, the lineup of quarterbacks in the Big Ten is just not very impressive. I mean, Oregon's quarterback this year, Dylan Gabriel, is probably the best guy in the Big Ten. Would he have been top 3 in the Pac-12 last year? Probably not. He would not be ahead of Bo Nix. He would not have been ahead of Michael Penix. He would not have been ahead of Caleb Williams. I mean, like, keep going. He might have been 4th. He might have been 5th, but he wouldn't be number 1, and he wouldn't have been clearly number 1. And that's where I think he's at going into the Big Ten. Like, you've got Will Howard. I think Will Howard's capable at Ohio State. Drew Aller at Penn State. Again, capable, serviceable, solid. You can win games with him. Nothing special. Just good. Nothing wrong with being a good player. You can win a national championship with a good quarterback. Stetson Bennett was a good to, sometimes really good quarterback. Got a good enough team around him. Georgia won a couple national championships. Nick Marshall went to a national championship game with Auburn back in the final year of the BCS. RIP. Bring back the BCS. Forget the 12-team playoff. Anyway, and Nick Marshall went on to be like a safety in the Canadian Football League. True-ish story. I did not double check that because I didn't know he was coming up on today's show. But like, he's just a good player. So you can do a lot with good quarterback play. I think he gets bashed on a lot. Like, he's good. He's fine. He's solid. Oh, you don't like him. No, it just means he's good. He's fine. He's solid. You win games with him there. I think for Oregon's defense, to go back to your actual question here, could very well have lower sack numbers. I wouldn't expect there to be a 1-to-1 offset of tackles for loss and sacks, right? So if the sack numbers go from 34, let's say, down to 25, because other teams aren't throwing the football as much because it's just not really in their nature and part of their offensive philosophies across the conference. Some of that's because of weather and some of that's because of personnel. I don't think you're going to see, therefore, a sevenfold increase numbers-wise in the number of tackles for loss, because getting a TFL on a run play, it's hard. It'd be an interesting question. I was just about to say, I'd argue that it's harder to get a TFL on a run play than it is a sack on a pass play. I think I stand by that. I think I'd stick with that because you have a better idea of where the quarterback's going to be than where the running back is going to be. Like if you know the quarterback is going to throw, he's going to throw the ball from within the pocket, and you got a range of where he's going to be. A running back can do all sorts of things. He can go in motion, he can sweep left, he can counter back right. Like it's just a lot tougher. And you also have more blockers on a run play typically than on a pass play, depending on the concept that you're running. So I think the sack numbers could go down. And I think that Oregon's run defense just needs to be as stiff as it was a year ago. You know, for all the talk, rightly deserved, about the increase in sack numbers and the better numbers defending the pass compared to their first year, and their points per game going from 27 down to 17 points per game. I think they should be under 20 points per game allowed again with the offenses that they are going up against. I just think that you got to be able to hover around the 100 to 110 rushing yards per game allowed. Last year, Oregon was kind of right around that 100-yard mark. It was one of the best marks in the Pac-12. And so if you put up that sort of mark again against the Big Ten, where they're more reliant on the run game and the offense produces the way it's capable of, then the season will go as Oregon fans hope that it will. Because I just don't think at that point, if you're able to shut down opposing offenses relative to what they're trying to accomplish, which is generally speaking not as much, Oregon's offense is just too talented to be held, consistently under 20 or 30 points. Like I can't see that even in the Big Ten, where you've got better defenses. I don't think Oregon is going to average 44 points per game again. But they're not going to average under 30. There's not going to be some cataclysmic drop-off here. There is still a boatload of talent. The offensive line is good enough. You're going to be able to have balance. You've got a good, experienced quarterback in Dylan Gabriel. So, yeah, I think the sack numbers could drop, but the number that you should look at to see whether the defense is still producing the way that it needs to succeed in the Big Ten is not TFLs, but rushing yards allowed per game. If they're getting gashed for 150 to 200 yards a game on the ground, then that's a problem, because then you're playing, a bunch of 2010 Stanfords over in the Big Ten, where they're just trying to run the ball, control the clock, and play a physical brand of football. So, love that question. Absolutely love that question. Welcome back to the question-asking world, Blazer Duck. This one came over from Bud, and I can appreciate the energy here. No more Pac-12 officials. What differences should Oregon expect from Big Ten officiating? Will any former Pac-12 officials work for the Big Ten? Goodness gracious, I hope not, to answer your second part of the question. I hope and pray that none of them make that move. It's happened before. I saw the official that was running the crew that had this just horrific, one of the worst calls I've ever seen. 2019, Washington State, they're driving down the field. They end up going down, taking the lead. Diamador Lenore is thrown away from making an interception by the receiver and then flagged for pass interference. The official that was running that crew, I saw him, I think in the Big Ten actually, within the last couple of years. It was the ACC. And I just thought to myself, how in the world... Now, he wasn't the one who made the call. He was just the guy who delivered the call and, don't shoot the messenger and such. But officials are regionally based crews. I would expect the officiating to be different. And Pac-12 officials are legendarily bad. I got news for you. There are going to be bad officials in the Big Ten. That's just how it goes. Can they be as bad as the Pac-12? There's no way. Like there's no way. But to think that we're the only conference over the years, the Pac-12, that had bad officials, incorrect. I think every fan base, every conference bashes their officials because it's a hard job, and a lot of them are clearly just bad at it. What I would expect to not have in the Big Ten are situations like what happened against Washington State in 2022, where they got the down wrong and they replayed it, but then they didn't replay. I don't know if you remember that whole fiasco, or they screwed USC last year or the year before out of an extra play before the half because they couldn't get the ball set, but they ran the clock. And, that sort of stuff is what I would like to see go away. Like 50-50 calls, look, it's a lot harder than it looks on TV. It's the big stuff where it's like, okay, no, this is actually not harder than it needs to be. Can you just please get the big stuff right? That's what I'd hope to see. Do I hope it's better? Do I think it will be? Yes. Do I think there'll be any former Pac-12 officials in there? Probably not, because they're usually geographically based. Maybe some guys have moved. I don't know, but can't control the officials. You just hope for the best and that you don't have to talk about them a ton. We do have to talk about Oregon basketball. They've got a new transfer forward, and I am more than a little intrigued. I'm intrigued as to whether you have checked out FanDuel yet. Have you? I hope so. Summertime means baseball, go Mariners, the NBA Finals, and more. You can bet it all on FanDuel. I mean, all of it. Everything that you could possibly want. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. $200? $200? That's a pretty sweet deal. You can bet Oregon plus 1.5 against Ohio State. You can bet Oregon to win the Big Ten. They have the second best odds. You can bet them to win the national championship. They have better odds than Alabama. That's all craziness. And it's all over there. $200 you can use to bet on everything from the finals MVP to who's going to hit one out of the park if you have any winning $5 bet. So if you're a new customer, you're in luck because this deal applies to you. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Add a big win to your summer bucket list. FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, and our official sportsbook sponsor here at the Locked On Network. You ever see Ocean's 13? I love the Ocean's movies. Ocean's 11 is my favorite movie ever. 12 is really good. It's the worst of the three, but that's like saying, what is that like saying? I don't know. I'll think of a better metaphor for that. I still really enjoy Ocean's 12. But in Ocean's 13, there's a scene where they're getting the dice that they've manipulated coming into rotation so that they can use the lighters that are actually kind of magnets so they can pull and, rig craps essentially and run what they call a reverse big store. And there's a scene where there are a variety of pit bosses and they are saying the phrase, "New dice coming in, new dice coming in." So that's what Oregon basketball's got. New dice coming in. And I got to tell you, these dice, or this die, however you would like to extend that analogy that I came up with, has got a top shelf name. Supreme Cook has come over from Georgetown. Matt Prame first reported and wrote about how Oregon had him on a visit recently, and he has committed to Dana Altman and the Ducks. He is going into his 5th year of college basketball. I don't hate that at all, because with N'Faly Dante's waiver getting denied and then the appeal getting denied, his career's over, and Oregon needed a big. They needed a big body. I did not think they could go into this year with a big man rotation of Nate Biddle, KJ Evans, Ibrahima Traore, a true freshman that hasn't played a minute of college basketball yet, obviously, and maybe run Brandon Angel as a 4 and slide Evans to the 5. I just don't think that's enough. I don't think you could survive injuries. I don't think it gives you the requisite amount of size. That is why they've gone out and added Supreme Cook. That's just, shout out to his parents, man. Or if it's a nickname, I don't care. That's an awesome name. Absolutely awesome name. So 6'9", not quite as big as Dante. Few guys are, but he looks a lot taller. Like when you watch him play, he was at Georgetown this past year. He spent the previous 3 at Fairfield before he went to Georgetown. But this past year, 10.5 points a game, 8 boards, and almost 4 offensive rebounds per game, which was first in the Big East. Pretty impressive stat line there. And this is a guy that I think makes a lot of sense. And he's been a consistent scorer throughout his career. He's been a 10-plus point a game scorer and averaged at least 8 rebounds in 3 straight seasons. Now, 2 of those were in a lower level conference, but doing it at Georgetown this past year, Big East has produced the last 2 national champions, and they've both been UConn, of course. This is a guy who is capable. I think the floor on what he can bring to the table is clearly pretty high because he's played 4 seasons of college basketball, and low and mid-major guys, they play against some absolute ballers down there. Here's maybe my favorite part about him so far. I'm going to knock on wood as ferociously as you have ever heard or seen anyone do after I say this, and you will understand why. In all 4 seasons of college basketball left, he should have just 1 year of eligibility remaining, he has played 27 or more games. Okay, so Oregon's injury luck with bigs just hasn't been great. But that's another reason why I'm encouraged by this move. Here's a question that I do have about Supreme Cook coming to the Ducks. Is he going to provide a stronger defensive presence than he has in the past? Because for the last several years, a long time, when healthy, N'Faly Dante has been, N'Faly Dante, I think is how you're supposed to pronounce it, Dante has been a one-man defense at times. He has been an enforcer. He is a presence. He blocks shots, rebounds incredibly well. Now, Cook rebounds well. Okay, 8 rebounds a game last year at Georgetown. That's a really, really good number. He's not quite as big as Dante. He has never in his career averaged a full block a game. And that makes me wonder what role he's going to play on this Oregon team. Because if he's a guy that has played so much and produced at a level where he expects to start, I don't know if he's starting. I think he could be the first big off the bench. I think there is a world in which Nate Biddle is the starter just because Biddle has got more size and maybe a little bit more overall skill, but Nate Biddle has had injury issues. And so do they bring Biddle off the bench and kind of ease him back and, get him into game shape as the season goes along? Now, certainly that's what the offseason is for, is to get him in the best shape they can, because that's why he didn't come back at the end. He got sick, lost a bunch of weight, and then decided, I can't come back and play because I've just lost too much weight. I'm too thin. I'm not going to be in game shape, and it wouldn't be good for me or anybody. So what I wonder is how much Supreme Cook can bring in the defensive end. Now, I don't know what kind of coaching he was getting at Georgetown. They have been a bad program for a long time, which is crazy. Like actually crazy. If you look at the history of college basketball, Georgetown being bad is pretty wild. It's like Duke being bad. There was a 2-year stretch or so where both Duke and North Carolina were struggling to make the tournament or missing the tournament, and it was weird. It was odd. Well, Georgetown's been that way for a while. They just can't hire the right coach over there. So maybe he just needs more defensive-oriented coaching. And certainly Dana Altman is a master of having big men that defend and block shots. This has been a hallmark of Dana Altman teams. There is always a big-time shot blocker in the middle. He has not been that to this point in his career. He's a little bit smaller. Dante is not some big jumper. He can jump. But when I think big jumper, I think Jordan Bell, Kenny Wooten, who were 6'9" or 6'8". I think Wooten was listed at 6'8", but they were elite shot blockers. Why? Because their timing and their jumping was exquisite and explosive. So I just thought of that old This Is Sports Center commercial. It's Scott Van Pelt and Steve Smith. Hey, Steve, would you describe your speed as explosive or incendiary? What? And then Scott's like, hold on. Put something down. And then Steve's right at his cubicle. That explains it. Incendiary. All sorts of tangents today. Anyway, so that's what I wonder about with Cook, is whether he comes in and starts. I have a hard time believing KJ Evans is not a starter, and that Brandon Angel is also not a starter. The transfer from Stanford, and Shellstad's going to start, and Bamba's going to start. We don't know who the starting center is. It could be Biddle. It could also be Supreme Cook. Production is there. Experience is there. Just don't know about the shot blocking. Doesn't mean he's not a good defender, by the way. Just means he's not a high-volume shot blocker. But maybe that's not what he was asked to do guarding certain players in the Big East. Maybe that's not what he was asked to do in their defensive scheme with regards to their rotations. Maybe their coaches said, no, we don't want you leaping in the air because it creates an opening. We want you to focus on boxing out your guy. I don't know. There are a lot of different factors that could be in play there. But that's the latest addition for Oregon on the basketball side. Just when you think they're done, they are not. They are not. And look, I'm inclined to think that they're done. But the last time I thought Oregon was done adding players, they've added 3 more. So Who knows? Who actually knows? But Supreme Cook, he's going to be an Oregon Duck this year and figures one way or another to play a significant role. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.